During the mid to late 1970s, Yugoslavia was showing itself to be one of the most fertile grounds in the Eastern Bloc for musical creativity. And late in that decade, one of the more ambitious proponents to emerge of this new wave of bands from the nation was Tako, who put out two albums between 1978 and 1980. And from the second of those, the album
U Vreći Spavanje,
the track
Putu Ka Sebi.
Now, I must warn that this recording was not made with the best of budgets for its time, but the quality of the music shines through nonetheless. Hear that guitar just duke it out with that bass ostinato. We've got that really punctual bass ostinato. We've got that guitar just scaling around it with all, all like fuzz and sizzling, and that percussion that's like, with all those cymbals. Has this real jerky thrust to it all. I was trying to make out the time signature. Let's meet the people we're hearing. Guitar on this is played by Miroslav Dukić, and his career, 36 credits according to Discogs. Tako is pretty much where he got his beginning. Went on to some stuff afterwards during the 80s and 90s. And the bass work of Dušan Kukas, and probably murdering the names. 14 credits according to Discogs. Oh, and let's see, he had a bit of a career before this, Grupa Opus. Yeah, there were a lot of, from Yugoslavia had a lot of bands that only got to put out 7 inches, oftentimes on Jugoton label. Played on an album in 1970. Between the two Tako albums, he played on an album by one Srdan Marjanovic. Interesting. Serbian pop rock singer composer. That looks like one to perhaps bookmark. Yeah. And now we are hearing the piano work of Đorđe Ilijin, and I believe this guy this guy did a solo album in 1983. Yeah, quite good. So he is a bit accomplished outside the band, beyond the confines of the Tako. And drums by Slobodan Felekatović, whose credits are pretty much limited to the Tako catalog, or so it would appear according to Discogs. does a lot of like these sustained passages, like really open cadence, almost like kind of pensive, with lengthy lyrical guitar and like these chordal sustains like on like the keyboards or bass and sort of plaintive piano lines. These kind of passages are like a mainstay on the two Tako albums. The drummer alternating between like say eights where there's like some like really big heavy slow paced like toms, and then like a complete dropout with just some cymbal work. Now we go into some like bluesy wailing scales. Of course, with that piano figure holding this section right here, tying it to the last one we were just in. Hear that really kind of icy organ sound in the background, filling out the backdrop now. A very primitive sound for 1980, yet it meshes well with the piano. And the rhythm section being very selective in where they drop notes or accents. It's like the drummer having really apparently spent some time on his own, like working out, okay, how am I going to put my own unique stamp on this track, you know? Once again, as I said in a video a few days ago, in some of these instrumentals, it's amazing how the drummer would find ways to be really to do his own thing and to not really just kind of let the music be his guide. It's almost like he's kind of fighting against some of the bars at times. It's amazing how you can either choose to follow the melodic component, which is guided by the piano, and has its beauty, or you could just let some of the instruments that are going more freeform or just laying down sounds, you can let that be your guide and go the more unpredictable route. Now we have that synthesizer tone that's playing slightly free, kind of over slowly though, over like behind the piano, kind of. And now the guitar and the piano are really complementing each other. We've got those sustained lyrical licks from the guitar over that just the persistent beauty of that cascading piano line. That's become quite an earworm at this point. And there you had it, the Yugoslavian band Tako with the track,
Putu Ka Sebi.
one of the highlights off the album,
U Vreći za Spavanje.
their second of two albums. This one, according to Discogs, they are technically billed for this second release as Grupo Tako. Although different media kind of differs on, and a lot of other media just refers to the band as Tako throughout their existence without getting all. Then again, sometimes like Rate Your Music will do that sometimes. That they'll get really like literal about the name of a band on a particular release, thinking that maybe like you may have a case where a band will have the spelling of the name, or the nameplate will be portrayed in a certain way just by the cover artist or something. Like it'll drop out a definitive article, or it'll add one, or something, and the database takes that to literally mean that they officially modified their nameplate for that release, and that might not necessarily be the case. Well, case in point, on one of the Amazing Blondell albums, the cover reads simply Blondell, and I guess it's since been specified that no, they did not shorten their name to just Blondell. The graphic designer or the artist just decided that they could facilitate the artwork better by dropping the word amazing from the cover. Anyway, yeah, Tako, one of many bands to emerge on the Yugoslavian scene during the late 1970s, and that scene was very healthy up through the next decade. I guess the musically freest nation of the Eastern Bloc, or one of them. Poland was also very thriving, and Czechoslovakia had a lot of good acts too. Yugoslavia and Poland, though, seem to be the most prolific in terms of output volume-wise. Less seem to have been the case in Hungary, but and this band, even though they didn't have the greatest recording budget, this track, it wasn't really much of an impediment. The first album, I found it to be a bit more problematic because certain styles of music need tonal clarity in order for you to appreciate all the nuances. And the kind of music that they were making is one of those. When things are kind of muffled, cold, kind of, and kind of icy in places, it can shrill, you could say to a certain extent. It can take away from some of the nuances and actually be a hindrance. Whereas limited production can add a certain quaint charm on simpler styles of music where the few details that actually exist are kind of lent a certain character by said production. Like, for instance, reggae. I think that I actually prefer 70s reggae to have kind of muffly, kind of remote sound, you know, like the sound of, say, being recorded on a 4-track at some distance, say, maybe removed by like a hallway or like in an adjacent room. That kind of remote, detached quality that where when you listen to those records, you feel like you're being transported to a different place and time. Minimal wave kind of benefits from some of that remoteness. Certain folk recordings, but with music like of the symphonic jazz rock variety, you really do need maximal production. You need clarity. You need more of that high-end sheen to it. Usually. The music has to be really good to overcome certain limitations that can otherwise, like, kneecap the recording overall and the music. But anyway, for more Rubies and Sapphires from the catalog of Tako, the 2 albums they did, and from other bands, like from see the directory of albums by Eastern European artists linked in the description below for artists from the former Eastern Bloc, and I just call it Yugoslavia because the nation was Yugoslavia at the time, and back when there was Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, some aspects of the map which no longer hold true, but since the directory deals with releases, say, between the early 1970s and late 1980s, will just... They exist for the directory in question, because that was the way it was all laid out at the time. And for this band and other bands from Yugoslavia, like the band Smack, another really great band from the nation. Yeah. And like and subscribe and comment on anything that stood out to you about this track or details that you picked up on that I didn't point out. And follow me on social media to know when the next video is coming out. And until next time, this is Zaragon, the world's most air travel trimaximalist, signing off.